future is not now?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
It's
All right. So for our TV show, we wanted to talk about Good Omens 2. And so when did the first season come out? Like 2019, 2020?
it was right before we got married. I think it was 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so basically the show is about an angel and a demon, Aziraphale and Crowley, who become friends. They meet at some point, they meet and they, throughout history, they meet each other for these little snippets, have an interaction, don't see each other for decades or years, and then meet each other again. And it's basically their heaven and hell's
representatives on Earth.
on Earth.
Yeah. So Crowley's there to tempt people. Aziraphale's there to do angel miracle things. It's never really. I mean, he's there to do basically just miracles, right?
Yeah.
It would seem that Crowley's the busier of the two, just because how many miracles are there versus how many temptations in life.
But he also says, I mean, humans do so much to themselves, he hardly does anything.
Yeah, that's one of the lines I really liked in this second series, because without spoiling what happens at the end of season 1, although if you're listening to season 2, a review about season 2, you probably don't care about what happens to season 1. So I think we're fair. I think it's fair game to talk about.
I mean, it's been 4 years.
Right. So Crowley and Aziraphale are no longer.
They're heaven and hell's representatives. They're
right.
now just, I think, an angel and a demon. Or
yeah,
I don't
just
think
living
they
on
really.
Earth. No, they are.
Okay.
Because they still can do miracles, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So they are what they are, but they're not there to tempt and do miracles for people. Basically, for those that have not seen or heard of Good Omens, what happens is they grow to love Earth so much that
in the first season,
yes, when they hear that Armageddon is about to happen, they decide that they're going to team up and sabotage it because they don't want the world to end. And by the end of the series, they get kicked out of the angel core and the demon core or whatever. That's not what it's actually called. I'm making that up. But you understand what I mean. And they are sentenced to be like executed. So heaven gets to execute Aziraphale and hell gets to execute Crowley. And
this is a huge spoiler.
They trick them, and they end up getting a deal where they get to just live on Earth, right? So that's where they are at the beginning of season 2. Kind of forgot where I was going with this. That was just a synopsis, I guess, of.
So basically, in season 2, it's like the fallout of them no longer being each other, like their representative for their party, and dealing with the fallout of that,
Yeah.
because there's always consequences,
right?
And it's kind of fun, like watching this show and Aziraphale and Crowley's like interactions and everything, just because they have like such a fun chemistry and like interactions, and like their relationship is so fun, and like their rapport is just so funny.
Yeah, that's the best part of this series is Crowley and Aziraphale. And specifically, I would say the parts that I liked the most of both of these seasons was when they took a Bible story and they twisted it, and they added Crowley and Aziraphale into the Bible story, and that is just the fun. Like, just to give an example, in the first series, they're watching Noah put all the animals onto the ark, and Aziraphale is just like sitting there with just this big goofy shit-eating grin on his face. And Crowley is just like walks up and he's like, oh, hey. And Aziraphale is like, oh, hi. And Crowley's like, what's going on? And Aziraphale, oh yeah, God is going to flood the earth and kill everybody except for the people and animals that are going on Noah's Ark right now. And Crowley's like, he's going to kill everyone? That sounds like something my lot would do. And he's like, oh, but it's okay because he's going to send a rainbow at the end. and that's going to be a promise that he's never going to do it again. And Crowley is like, oh, how kind. It's just like these stories that you know from the Bible, but you maybe didn't really think about like how that would play out in real life if that were to happen today. It takes those stories and puts these two opposing entities there, but they behave as if they're real people. So Crowley's just like, that's kind of messed up. He's gonna kill everyone, everyone. And I love those little like parts where they twist the Bible stories and they add the two characters into the scene.
So something I thought was interesting about that show was in the first season, they're obviously friends.
Mm-hmm.
They don't always want to admit it because one is an angel and the other is a demon, and it's against the rules.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I feel like they towed the line between friendship and romance in the first season, and it was always kind of fun because like it left a lot up to like the viewer to like interpret it how they may.
Yeah.
And in the second season, they really leaned more into the romance of it, which I feel like wasn't giving enough credit to like the viewer's imagination.
So what I liked about their relationship in the first season was they definitely alluded to the fact that they might be more than friends, but I always kind of thought of it as like they are supernatural entities, so their relationship kind of transcended the need for them to be like physical in the way that humans are physical, which like that that was only my perception of what I was watching in the first season and what I read in the book, because this is based on a book, and the first series is the book. Like it wraps up and starts in the same places. So this is like a continuation. Let me back up a little bit, I guess. So the book was written by two authors, Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, and Terry Pratchett died.
R.I.P.
Yeah, thank you. Should we do a moment of silence? All right, that's long enough. So then Neil Gaiman was the other author. That's probably a name that a lot of people are familiar with. He's done a lot of stuff: The Sandman, The Graveyard Book, Coraline, all that kind of stuff. So he wrote this second series. So it is written by one of the original authors, but I guess the way that I look at the book is they didn't include the physical relationship for a reason. And for me, that reason was they kind of wanted it to be ambiguous, maybe, or if not ambiguous, just like them being soulmates. And they didn't want maybe to, this is me speaking for the authors, I have no idea, this is just how I kind of perceived it, is maybe they are just soulmates and they don't need to be physical and they want to tell this story in this way. But I guess they could have been planning to do a sequel, and maybe Terry Pratchett died before they got to do the sequel.
Yeah.
So
I also think the way that they did it in the first season and in the book like gives a lot of power to the reader / viewer. Because you get to like imagine it beyond what it is. And interpret it how you want. Or just take it at face value and they were really good friends.
Right. Yeah.
Or read into it and there was something there.
Yeah.
And like something about like season 2, it's not like they just they just kissed at the end. They really did have that grow throughout the whole season and have like their own realizations through it, and then they kissed at the end and it's a dramatic, confusing thing for them.
Yeah.
But I just like it when shows give power to the viewer to interpret things as they may.
And maybe the reason, so if you haven't been able to pick up on this, we liked season 2 less than we liked season 1, right?
Yeah.
I think we agree on that. But we still liked season 2.
And I would still recommend it for people to watch,
Right. I think, again, like what I love about this series is when they're doing biblical stories with Aziraphale and Crowley, or they're just doing like a Aziraphale and Crowley adventure together. I think that those two just work so well together. And the first series is all about them loving Earth so much that they're going to try and stop Armageddon, right? Season 2 is kind of, I feel like the purpose of it is to develop their relationship from where it was in season 1 to where it ends up in season 2. That's sort of how I see the second series. That was the reason. That's kind of what it all led up to. That was the climax. But my favorite parts of the show were like the playing fast and loose with with the Bible
Yeah.
and the stories in the Bible and the prophecies in the Bible. And there's just a little bit less of that in season 2.
Yeah. And I don't think, I don't think that it's like blasphemy,
Oh,
this show.
yeah.
I think it, really brings light to some of like the irony of these things.
Right.
How God and Satan, had a deal about Job or whatever.
Right. So this is what I would say, like depending on your faith and how those stories are taught to you, you're going to see the stories in a certain way. And if you are easily offended or like get really defensive about what you perceive as like mistellings of the stories of the Bible, you probably should stay away from this show because it'll probably find a way to offend you. Um, but from the perspective of like, I guess someone that's atheist, I'm not saying I am, by the way. I'm just saying like I'm thinking that that's where Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman come from. I don't
Interesting.
I don't know that for a fact, but just from watching some of the other things that Neil Gaiman has done and reading some of the other things that Neil Gaiman has written, that's I sort of get that impression. But if you come to the story of Job as an atheist and you're reading it, it's like, wait a second. So Job was like basically a perfect person, and Satan is like, I bet he'll curse God if I take away his family. I bet he'll curse God if I take away his house and all these riches and all these great things that he has. And God's like,
What?
okay, see, yeah, let's see if he does. And so that's how it's framed in the show. Like Crowley shows up with a proclamation from God, and it says, "You can do whatever you want to Job and his family and his flocks and his house. XOXO, love God." And Aziraphale is just like, "But he's God's favorite." And Crowley's like, "Oh well," and he just starts blasting the sheep and just blowing them up. And so like that's probably what that story looks like from an outsider perspective. It just looks like a bet that God has with Satan that Job is going to stay faithful, which like is funny. Like
Yeah.
it's funny to think of it that way, but I don't think you need to like take this as gospel. It's just
No. And I, like Braden said, you don't need to be religious to find this enjoyable.
yeah.
I feel like the Bible, like in the United States, the Bible is a fairly well known, like the stories inside of it.
Right.
And like it's fun to like have these moments between an angel and a demon and like watch their reactions because they love Earth and they like humans and
Yeah.
their real reactions to like some of the things that have happened.
But I'll also say, like, if you have grown up in a religious household or you had a religious upbringing and you have read the Bible, there are like tons of like little things that you'll just think are so funny about this show. The example I gave to Micah earlier was in the first season, they give Aziraphale a flaming sword. This is Adam and Eve, by the way. The story. This is where they first meet Crowley and Aziraphale, and it's Adam and Eve getting kicked out of the garden. And Crowley's like, "What happened to your flaming sword? You had a flaming sword." And Aziraphale says that he gave it to Adam because it just looked like Adam needed it more. And so you see Adam off in the distance, like fighting a lion with this sword that's on fire. And that comes from like a little verse in the Bible that says that God puts cherubim and a flaming sword at the east entrance to Eden. And I always was just like, what is, okay, first of all, what's a cherubim? And second of all, why, if cherubim is plural, why one flaming sword? Like, what does that even mean? And this is just how Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett read that verse and added the thing into the show. So like that's an example of like, if you know the story, you're gonna appreciate little details like that.
Did you want to give the parental whatever before?
Oh sure. I would say,
so I think this is rated TVMA.
Yeah. I'm not sure why.
Language probably.
Well, but there's like maybe 2 F words in the whole
No.
in the whole 2 seasons.
I don't know.
It's really light on language. Like there's really not
my water bottle.
There's really not much. I remember one F word that Crowley says, but that's in the first season, and I can't remember any other ones besides that.
But it's probably language. I mean, because it's British.
Yeah, if you're into British humor, you'll love this probably. The only parental guidance I would give, besides like the language, there's like maybe one episode where there's Nazis that get sent to hell and then they come back as zombies, and so they're Nazi zombies, which is funny if you've ever played Call of Duty.
Oh my goodness.
But like they come back to Earth and they have to eat brains to survive, but they don't really show anything. It's more just like the sounds and whatever.
Like
So,
stuff's spurting across
yeah,
the screen, but like you
it's a
don't
little
see
bit,
them.
a little bit graphic, but
Yeah.
not horrible. And then obviously, like if you don't feel like you want to watch these Bible stories being changed or being kind of teased, or poked fun at, then probably don't watch this. But that's our cat feeder. That's actually Micah's food. It's your dinner time, Micah.
Oh, dinner.
You're missing dinner.
Oh, dang it.
I'm sorry.
Oh. So I think I would rate this show probably 9 Bildad the Shoeites.
Bildad the Shoeite.
Out of 10.
Series 2?
No, the whole show as a whole. I mean, season 2, maybe like a 7.
Bildad's.
Bildad the Shoeites out of 10. Bildad the Shoeites.
Yeah.
Which, go watch the show so you can know that reference.
Nice.
But I think as a whole, like the first and second season, probably a 9.
Yeah.
But
it's still very good.
It's very good.
It's one of the better shows,
yeah,
to come out in the last year or so. I'm gonna give this season. You gave it a 7, didn't you?
This season a 7.
Yeah, that's probably what I would give it. I'd give it 7 flaming swords out of 10 possible flaming swords it could have received.
Yeah.
And then the first season's a 10 for me. I love
a 10.
Yeah, I love the first season.
Yeah.
But worth it. Like, it's a thumbs up. Whatever way you slice it. Just as long as you're okay with a little bit of
poking fun.
Yeah. Right. Should we move on?
Yeah.
Okay.